Hey everybody, it's Bob Goff here. I am so delighted to be with you. This has been so fun to listen to the stories. Matthew 13, it said that Jesus never spoke to anybody without telling them a story. And here's why. I think that we relate to the stories. We hear that. I didn't know. I was the guy that didn't know where Gabon is. I've been in Africa for 22 years. But here's the deal. I'm not going to fake it. I just got my phone out. I figured it out. And that's what you're going to do. What I want you to do is not like talk about who you want to be as if you've arrived there. That's what Ananias and Sapphira did. Get real about where you are. See what is that's keeping you back. And then to say, what's my next move? How can I get there? I love the definition. It's Hebrews 11:1. It's the definition of faith. And here it is. Faith is confidence in what you're hoping for and assurance of what you haven't seen. I know in junior high school, what I was hoping for was a date. I wanted it in the worst way. Never quite happened, but I rolled into high school and I still had the same hope. I want a date. 4 years of high school, I repeated a grade. No date. It was happening to everybody else, but like not to me. I squeezed 4 years of college into 5. Same ambition. I want a date. Nothing with a face like this. Who could imagine? I was in my second year of law school and sweet Maria walks in the room and I was like, yes, you will be mine. I asked her out on a date and she said no as well. I'm like, do I have something pinned to me? I heard that she was going to be at this camp and she was going to be leading some high school girls as the work crew. So I'm no dummy. I got 12 high school guys and I got adjacent to where she was. And the first night, this elderly woman, her pacemaker stops. She face plants in the spaghetti. She's gone, like, go to Jesus, out of here. But I knew how to do CPR. And so I started pushing on her chest. I am blowing into her wrinkled lips. It was not the first kiss I was hoping for. And she lived, full Lazarus. And I knew I had a future in medicine. What I want you to do is this. I thought, Maria thought this guy's not much to look at, but he could be useful in a pinch. What I want you to do is to say, what is it that you can get adjacent to? You've had this idea of missions. You've thought about doing something with your faith. Maybe you've read Galatians 5:6. The only thing that matters is your faith expressed in love. And you've had this urging. I want you to get adjacent to that. I want you to say, what is it that I need to do and why am I doing what I'm doing? I wear this stupid ball hat. You guys, I just lost a bet. 8 years ago, my neighbor Carol, she had cancer. We knew by the end of the week she was going to be with Jesus. And she was a huge Red Sox fan. And I've never even gone to a game. Evidently, we have a major league team in San Diego. Who would know? And I told her, Carol, I will wear your Red Sox hat for the rest of my life and represent the Red Sox here on earth. But in exchange, every time Jesus walks by you, you need to mention my name. It's 8 years later, I'm still wearing this. And when I go through New York, through the airport, people hiss at me because they're evidently rooting for the other team. Now, if they knew I was wearing my dead neighbor's hat, they would feel so awkward. And what I want to do is pause for a second. This idea of missions, it's like getting underneath someone else's hat, knowing why they're doing what they're doing, and you understanding why you're doing what you're doing. And that's where we get, what do you want? What faith, confidence in what you're hoping for, assurance in what you haven't seen. And if missions for you, get near some people that are doing missions. That's why you're tuning in. Find people. You don't have to go across the ocean. Go across the street. I love what Jen was talking about the refugees. I mean, here they are right with you. I want to know what we're going to do. Find people who will inspire you with their words. And then you be the kind of person that inspires others with your availability. I'll tell you, I was a teenager and my parents smoked like chimneys. There was no such thing, evidently, as secondhand smoke back then. And I remember there was this young guy that had just taken over as the Surgeon General of the United States of America. His name was C. Everett Koop. Some of you remember him. Do you remember him? Yeah, it was a while ago. I wrote him a letter. I said, my parents smoke a lot of cigarettes and I'm afraid they're gonna die. You know what he did? He wrote him a letter on stationery from the Surgeon General of the United States. And he said, your son wrote to me, stop smoking. And they did. It's like, my dad is 95 years old. He's living next door to me. You know why? That guy took 5 minutes to write somebody a letter, to raise his voice. Now, what I want you to do is lift your voice. What do you want? What I want to do is just be available. I want to go out into the missions field, not because I want to like convert other people. I want to convert me into a more humble version of me and be available. It wasn't long ago, I was over in Naples, Florida, and walking down the beach and looking at the seagulls. I saw something really awesome going on. So I'm kind of a sucker for taking pictures. This is what was going on. There was these two guys, they were helping their buddy ask the most important question he'd ever ask anybody in his life. And here was the question, will you marry me? You know the reason I snapped the picture is that they couldn't give the answer. All they could do is help him ask the question. Boy, I'm telling you, to ask me what a person that goes overseas with medical missions does, they just help people ask the questions. What do you want? Like, what is it that you're hoping for? And some people are just hoping for a break. They're just hoping for an ease of tension. And I don't know about you, but I've just noticed everybody's just so uptight right now. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, it's just crazy. Oh, I flew here from San Diego. There was all this ruckus. I was just listening to music and writing my next book. And all this ruckus is happening. In the seat next to me, a guy lost his mind. They arrested him on the plane. I'm like, oh my gosh, people are on edge. So what I want you to do is to say, what is it that's distracting you? What's happening is that some of you have this beautiful thing that God has put in your heart, and you've gotten distracted by all the crazy going on. I brought something, you can see I'm big on illustrations. You should have seen me in second grade. I'm like, it's a llama. Here, check this out. Remember these when you were a kid? Remember these? Yeah. So take something really small in your life. Maybe you got married and you had a little dispute. And it started really small, and then all of a sudden, it got really big. That's called catastrophizing. So sometimes what will happen is we'll take something really big and immense like our faith, and we'll make it really small. And so what happens, distraction takes big, immense, beautiful things and make them really small. Do an audit to say, what are the biggest things in my life? What is it that I'm hoping for that'll last? Forget your career. Let's talk about your character. Let's talk about take away everything you know. I'm a lawyer. I've been a trial lawyer for 32 years. And I walked into my office and I quit. It was my own office. I just said, I'm out of here. I went full Cortez. I just burned the ships. What I want you to do is to think about this. What is it that God is doing uniquely in you? What have you been distracted by what's going on around you? And could we get back to that big stuff, right? Can we get to the things that are supposed to be you? And I'm telling you, one of the easy ways to get less distracted is to get more available. I've written a couple books, and at the end of every book, I put my cell phone number on the last page of the book. Don't call now. I know who you are. You guys, I get about 100 calls a day. It's awesome. I can't get a thing done. It's terrific. I got a call from a sheikh. He said, I'm a sheikh. And I'm like, awesome. I've never met one of you before. And he said, will you come to Saudi Arabia and build a school in our country? I'm like, build your own school. And then he said, would you like to come to my palace? I'm like, yes. So I get there, you guys. When I land, he makes me a latte. You guys, this is the latte. He put his palace on the latte. Like, you are so insecure. And then you know what he did? He took a tablespoon of 14 karat gold and he put it over the top. You think you're paying a lot at Starbucks. He put this, he said, if you drink the gold, it'll make you look young again. Like, liar! But what if we give the poor, the hurting, the lonely, the refugees a tablespoon of our very best? What if we're just not distracted about what your faith looks like, but you get back to what it actually is? And Paul talked about his buddy Timothy. It was so great. He was kind of talking about him behind his back. And he said this, I don't have anybody like Timothy. He's a guy who takes a genuine interest in the people around him. Isn't that beautiful? Boy, I'm telling you, I want to be known as that guy. I want to be the one that takes a genuine interest in the people around me right here, the refugees in our community. Don't go to the end of the earth if you haven't gone to the end of your street. Take a genuine interest in the people that God's already dropped in your life and to just say, what is it that's going to last? If you take away everything that you're known for, like whatever's left is who you are. So Bob the trial lawyer. Take away all the trial lawyer stuff. What's left? Oh, Bob, the guy that writes books. Take away all the books. What's left? And I think what I want to have it left are the things that 1 Corinthians 13:13 said would be left. Faith, hope, and love. And I'm telling you, if I was darkness, I don't see the devil around every corner, but if I was darkness, what I would do is I would attack the stuff that's going to last. I wouldn't try to destroy you. I would just try to distract you. Because destroy you, that's one and done. Distract you, oh, that'll take you off the game board forever. So what I want to do is say, what is it that's taking you away, right? Taking you away from your faith. What's taking you away from your hope, all the things that are going on around you. And what's taking you away from your expression of love? The only thing that matters is your faith expressed in love. And here's the crazy part. Jesus doesn't need your help. I asked him before he came up here. What he wants is your heart. He wants an authentic version of you. He wants the real you to show up. And you don't have forever to do it. You get 27,373 days on average. Yeah, and I just want to know what you're going to do with this. I brought this because I'm kind of an illustration guy. None of us know how long we're going to live, right? But what do you think? How long are you going to live? I'm just asking one of our friends right here. What do you think? 85. All right. Here, I'm giving you 87. You're welcome. But this ain't happening. Sorry. So I'm 63, and this already happened. So this is what we've got left. Really, and I eat Pop-Tarts. I love those things. So what are you going to do with what you've got left? I don't care if you're 24 listening to that and you feel like you got 7 inches and I only got 3. What are you going to do with what you got left? And then I want to know this, what's going to last? And I'll tell you, the way that you take a genuine interest in the way people around you, undistracted by all the crazy going on in the world, focused on the things that are going to last, fearless, that idea that Paul talked about in 2 Timothy 1:7, that he didn't give us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and self-control. I want to just focus on that stuff. And we only got about this much time to do it. There was a trucker, it was outside of Detroit 3 or 4 years ago. He had places to go and things to do, and I'm sure he was late because he was a trucker. And he went under an overpass and he saw a young man standing on the edge. It looked like he was going to jump. That trucker got on the radio. He called every single trucker heading in that direction. He told them about this guy. He told them about the overpass that was happening. He didn't stop there. He got on the radio. He called every trucker going in the other direction and said, there's a kid that's about to make an irreversible decision. And this is what happened next. They all stopped. You guys, that's faith expressed in love. Hey, here's what was said without a word spoken. If you fall, you're not fallen far. But we've got you. Jesus has got you. That's medical missions. That's taking what you know into a hurting world, knowing why you're doing what you're doing, and then not doing it for the applause, because if you make a big deal here, you get a little golf clap. If you don't make any deal about it here, it's just the evidence of your love released into the world. Jesus said we'll be talking about that for eternity. And so if we can get that right, then we just end up moving forward. We just need to figure out what's scaring you. What's keeping you away? I heard this last courageous couple talking about snakes. I mean, I even heard the word snakes and I just tensed up a little. Are you guys with me on that? I'm like, I've read about snakes because I'm trying to overcome this fear. Here's what I figured out. You know, anacondas, 25 feet long, they're 3 feet around. And if they wrap around you, you got about a minute when they put the squeeze on you. You know what an anaconda is unusually susceptible to? Alcohol. 1 drop right on its nose. Now your arms would be at your side, so that would be a difficult thing. But what I want you to know, ask yourself is, what is it that you're most afraid of and what is it most susceptible to? Right? And my fears are most susceptible to truth and obedience. And so if somebody says, like, I feel this calling to medical missions, I'm like, hey, let's speak a little truth over that and a big dollop of obedience. What is it that God wants you to do? And Jen just said it so well. Hungry people, thirsty people, sick people, strange people, naked people, and people in jail. That's it. Put a bunch of that on top. And don't just say, you know, these are just swell kinds of thoughts, but to say, like, let's actually do this. I teach at Pepperdine Law School. Could you imagine me teaching at a top tier law school? Like, everybody passes the bar. You get a car. You get a car. I also teach at San Quentin. Every 3 weeks. The guys in my class there don't change. They're actually in there for quite a while. And the guys at San Quentin, though, I'm doing because I go there to learn. They haven't learned a thing from me. Jesus didn't say, go to hungry people and thirsty people and sick people and strange people and naked people and people in jail because it's like doing a solid for Jesus. He did it because if you want to meet him, you got to meet them. And so when it talks about sick people, I want to meet Jesus. I think you guys do too. It's way up on my list. What I want to do is follow the path that he said. He said, if you wanted to meet me, you'd have to meet them. There's a guy that plays a whole bunch of music, and he was swinging through San Diego on this tour, and I went back early to just catch up with him in this little room they had behind the stage, and there was a guy sitting at the end of the table, and I didn't know him. I guess he knew somebody in the band, and so the guys and I were talking and catching up on old days, and he just kept staring at me. Like, yikes. And so I just like, la, 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 la. So it was time for them to go out and take the stage, and me and this guy, like, we walked over to get in through a side door and take our seats, and I walked through the door, nobody thought anything. He walks the door, people lose their minds. This guy, it turns out he's an actor. His name is Jim Caviezel. In The Passion of Christ, he's the Messiah. You guys, I was in the room with Jesus for 45 minutes. I didn't even know it. And I'm telling you, Jesus is in the room. You go do the stuff that Jesus talked about in Matthew 25, when, like, to go to hungry people, Jesus is in the room. You'll find sick people, Jesus is in the room. You want a reason to go do what you're doing? You want to have that? Go just say, I want to meet Jesus. And he promised if you meet them, you're going to meet us. But you got to figure out why you're doing the quirky stuff you're doing in your life. We can't take other people far if we haven't gone deep ourselves, right? You need to do a little of this introspection. And so I got invited by one of these guys that's in San Quentin to pitch batting practice. And I wasn't a very good throw in high school, but they've got this kind of like humble, like diamond in the center of the yard at San Quentin. And so I said, sure. And so I got up on the mound and I threw this ball and it kind of went over the plate. And this guy just crushed it. I mean, it was like a jailbreak. I think it's still going. I picked up another ball. I threw it over the plate a little harder and he crushed that one. And then you know what he did? He started crowding the plate. And you guys, that just ticked me off. And I thought, I'm going to brush him back. And so I wound up, I threw the balls hard. I hit him right in the head. Oh, people, pro tip here, do not hit a guy who's in for murder in the head with a ball if he's holding a metal bat. And so we had a decision to make, each of us. He had to decide if he was going to charge the mound, and I had to decide if I was going to run away like an 11-year-old girl, and I decided I was gonna. And so what we did instead, we had a conversation. We just talked about, man, what was going on inside you, Bob, that just made you want to like brush me? You hit me. And I said, well, what made you crowd the plate? That ticked me off. And I want us to have these kind of honest conversations. We only got this little bit of time to get it done. Let's have those conversations. 27,373 days minus every Pop-Tart you eat. That's what you've got. Let's jump in. And ask the questions, but don't feel like you need to have an answer for everything. Did you know in 3 years of Jesus's public ministry, he asked 307 questions? Get this, he only answered 3. Is that crazy? In 3 years. Here was the first one. It was a lawyer like me who was trying to set him up, and he said, what's the big commandment? And he said to love God with your heart and your soul and your mind, and love your neighbor like yourself. The second question, somebody said, will you teach us how to pray? And he said, yes, I will. Our Father, you know how the rest goes. And the third one, he was in front of Pilate. And Pilate said, so you're the king of the Jews, huh? And he said, yes, I am. I'm telling you, you don't have to have an answer for everything, but you got to have an answer for this thing. You got to know why you're doing what you're doing. And if you're crystal clear on why you're doing what you're doing in medical missions, this is just going to be unstoppable. I don't want my faith to be the summary of all the doctrine I believe, because I met people that have great doctrine and lousy theology. I want to have great doctrine and great theology. And loving people the way that Jesus did is awesome theology. Go do that. Go do a ton of that. Get to the thing. I'm fascinated by idioms, like, you know, a phrase that is passed on. It has a meaning aside from the phrase. Somebody had said, you know, I'm going to cut to the chase. That has never happened to me. I'm always a little bit all over the place. But he said, I want to cut to the chase. And so I looked that up. Do you know where that phrase comes from? It comes from Hollywood. During the silent movies, there would be Charlie Chaplin. He'd have a cane or something, but nobody knew the plot in the movie. So they always put a chase scene in there. And so cutting to the chase means to get to the part where something happens. And if you believe in Jesus Christ, if you made a deal with him, you said, hey, this is going to change everything in my life. I'm going to be that new creation that you talked about. Cut to the chase. Get to the part where something happens. Don't do it because people will think well of you. Do it because Jesus is in the room. And he's in the room here, and he's in the room there, and he just wants us to do courageous things. Find something more courageous to do than everything you've done before. And I'm telling you, that is going to lead you on an amazing adventure. I had been hearing what you had been hearing 4 or 5 years ago in Afghanistan, what was going on with these women that were under the thumb of the Taliban. They wouldn't let them learn how to read or write, and it just ticked me off, but I don't know anybody in Afghanistan. Do you? Yeah. So I got on WhatsApp. I met this guy. He said he's from Afghanistan. I'm like, awesome, I'm looking. And so we're sending messages back and forth, but I don't know what team he's playing for. And you cannot be talking to the wrong team. So I'm trying to kind of tease it out. I'm like, so how do you spend your day? When I say the word enemy, who pops to mind? Crickets, nothing. So I'm no dummy. I went back to Washington, D.C. and met with like our team and said, do you know who this guy is? This is what they said. He's a good guy. I'm like, got any more detail? Nothing. We keep asking these questions of Jesus and he just says, follow me. He just says, come, I'm not giving you the details. This isn't a business trip. It's an adventure I'm inviting you on. And so if medical missions is calling your name, just jump into this adventure. Don't put your toe in the water. Grab your knees and do a cannonball. I flew to Afghanistan to meet this guy. What a bad idea. I flew in to Kabul and knowing nobody. When I landed, I got a text message from this guy. He said, Bob, I can't meet you at the airport. I'm like, shoot. I'm not sure if that's what I said, but you get the idea. He said, what you need to do is leave the airport and start walking through Kabul alone. And people, I do not blend. He said, You're gonna find a car, the engine will be running, and the last number on the license plate's a 7. Get in the car. Now, how many of you people are like, I'm out of here? How about you Enneagram 7s? Like, what could possibly go wrong? So I started walking, I found the car, I found the engine, I got in. There's a guy that doesn't speak English and I don't speak him. I get another message from this guy. You know who I'm talking to? A guy right at the top of Afghanistan's leadership. You know what he wanted to know? He wanted to know if I would trust him enough to do what he told me to do. Then he'd trust me enough to build a girls' school with me, you guys. And we did. We built the school and the girls just started coming. We went to the people in charge. This guy's, he's the one in charge of the whole area. And we just did it with the kindness and respect. That idea that in 1 Peter, it said to always be ready to make a defense for the hope that's within you. And I met a lot of people that want to be Jesus's lawyer. And he doesn't need one and you're not good enough. Newsflash. But he said to continue on, but do it with kindness and respect. I'm telling you, dealing with people with kindness and respect, not being there to teach, but to say, I just want to be helpful. What is it that we can do? How can we move the needle into the lives of some little kids? And this is what started happening. These little girls started coming. Every single day, hundreds of little girls. Started giving them balloons. We just started painting balloons on their arms and feet. We started seeing them the way that God sees them. And I think there's something beautiful that happens when we're the ones that are actually like moving forward with our faith, finding ways to connect with people. Then what we do is we see this happen. This picture was not taken 4 years ago. This was taken 5 weeks ago. When the Taliban took over again, we went back to the people in charge and we said, will you let our girls go back to school? And it was like we did this Jedi thing because they said yes. What would happen if you knew why you were doing what you were doing, that you knew you served the Lord of the universe, and he doesn't seem to like lawyers much, but he's nuts about kids. And to say, what if we make that happen right here? And in addition to that, what if we make it happen? There are 10,000 Afghan refugees in San Diego right now. But just hungry people. We got a truck. I had 2 heads of lettuce in the back of it the first time. And it turns out people wanted the lettuce. And so there's 500 families 3 times a week that are like finding a way. This isn't about us being the heroes of the story. And it's not us being the victims of all the things that we tried and didn't work. It's participation that God is inviting us to. He says, if you can just bring all of your concerns to me, if you can just bring that to me, then I will do exceedingly, amazingly, mind-blowingly, this is me riffing on the idea, more than you could ever ask or imagine. What we need to do is show up. I remember when I asked Sweet Maria to marry me. I got down on one knee, and I'm emotionally incontinent. I mean, I just cry at everything, which is really a problem if you're a trial lawyer. I said, will you? And then I started crying. And she said, marry me? I'm like, that. Philippians 1:6. It says that God will complete what he started in you. But here's the deal. We got to start it. And I don't want you to just go on this. We don't need a bunch of Red Bulled out, over-caffeinated Christians just like ricocheting off. We need people who know why they're doing what they're doing. That this high calling from the God of the universe, that if we met hungry people and thirsty people, if we cared for sick people and strange people, people that kind of creep you out, people that creep you out the way you creep them out, people that are naked in jail, that we would actually see that Jesus is in the room. And so I just want to invite you guys, whatever it is that's rustling around in you, could you just like start moving around with that? To just say, what is it that you want? What is it that you're hoping for? What is it that you have confidence that you haven't seen yet? Make the call. I got on WhatsApp. Find your next courageous move and then make it. I'm going to close with this, Zechariah 4:10. I'm a grandpa now. And so I can relate to this thing that to not despise the small beginnings, because the Lord delights in watching the work begin. How many of you, if you had a grandkid or one of your children and they took their first step, you'd say like, well, I've seen better. Like, no, of course not. You say, this is awesome. I'm going to have my third grandkid this week. It may be happening right now. Who knows? But I'm living in constant anticipation. I'm looking, my head's on a swivel. And go do that with your faith. Whatever it is that God has planted in you, like Paul talking to Timothy, to fan the flame of this unique gift that God has given you. And I bet you, it's going to lead you to poor, hurting, lonely, isolated people, maybe afar and maybe across the street. God bless you guys.
Bob is here. Bob, it's always fun to hear you. The story about the hat, I had never heard that before.
Isn't that crazy?
Have you never taken it off?
I haven't,
Really?
To Maria's chagrin. Yeah, when the Red Sox finally won the World Series, or whatever, my only sport is cheesecake, but like they won the big game, whatever that was, and I went to her graveside and I said, Carol, can I take this stupid hat off? And nothing. So I'm just making good. Be careful the bets you make.
Well, Bob, I appreciate your talk tonight, your new book that's coming out, Undistracted. In fact, we have a couple of questions that have come in from our audience, and they're kind of related to that. I thought this was a really good one. How frequently have you found that people, even Christians, seek distraction in their life on purpose, maybe a numbing agent, or because they're unhappy in their life?
Yeah, sometimes, and it happens to all of us, we have our preferred ways of kind of numbing out or dealing with ambiguity in our life. And we all deal with it differently. Sweet Maria Goff is not somebody that wants to go around and be with a lot of people, right? So her world is me, the people we made, the people they married, and the people they made. That's the beginning, the middle, and the end. So she's like the wise owl, but I'm Tigger, right? I want to be around everybody. And what I learned when I was really young is that I had this story that I made up for myself. The story that I made up for myself, because some nutty stuff happens to all of us. At 8 years old, I concluded everyone is going to leave me. I will be rejected by everyone. Is that crazy? And now I don't come across as a really insecure guy, but I remember the story being everyone is going to leave me and being very insecure. And then what I did is I made rules to support the story. So what was the rule? Don't go deep with anybody. Oh, be funny. And then you can just be snorkeler. You won't be a scuba diver. You don't actually have to go deeper than 1.5 feet. And so if you figure out the stories that you made and then the rules you made around those, that were actually helpful for your little 8-year-old heart. But to just say, let's update this. I'm 63. Does that need to be true? Was it ever true? And I think if we figure out that, we'll figure out why are we doing what we're doing. So if you just say you have these, you could be in your 20s or 30s and not have any deep relationships, and you say, I wonder why that is. Oh, the rule is just keep it superficial and all that. So it isn't always an activity. It can be like the way that you have set some boundaries. And the beautiful thing about this idea about it being a new creation is that you can leave that behind. You can say, that's old Bob. Old Bob's on the bus. Like lawyer Bob, he's out of here. And to say like new Bob, Grandpa Bob, and who does he want to be? And he just wants to be available to his family.
That's beautiful.
That's really good.
You know, Bob, I had a quote out of your book I wanted to ask you because it really struck me. It says, distractions are not riptides, they are slow-moving currents. It will lead you away from your ambitions, your relationships, and your joy every time. I like that slow-moving currents. They're very subtle, aren't they? Sometimes?
Yeah, you don't know. I think the context of that, I've sailed to Hawaii a couple times, which cracks me up because I get tremendously seasick. It's good for a great weight loss program. That's good for 20 or 30 pounds. It's a little messy, but effective. There's a current that will take you from Cabo to Maui. And it goes at 10 inches every minute, which is pretty fast if you're moving from one side of the couch to the other. But from Cabo to Hawaii, I mean, you're not going to make it. And so what I want us to do is find a little bit faster way to get to where we're going. So people that would say, even with activating their faith, that someday I'm going to, or as soon as I pay off my student loans, I'm going to, or some. And so what happens is deferral can be one of those things. That if I just pick something beautiful, but then defer it to another time, that it doesn't make me feel guilty. It's definitely on my list. You just never get to it. And so I'm really on that hunt for deferral in my life.
Yeah, that's so good. You know, you mentioned that we need to have honest conversations with ourselves. We hear that, but how do we do it?
Yeah, sometimes find a safe friend. And you'll know they're a safe friend because they won't tell you what to do. They'll remind you about who you are.
Oh, that's good.
Like they're not there blowing sunshine at you. You just say, I see who you guys are. I know your love for people. Like, and to say, if there's a behavior or something going on that seems inconsistent with that, they're not like calling you out. They're just saying, hey, tell me, like, help me connect the dots on that.
That's so good.
Yeah, there's somebody that helped me kind of connect. I was like covered in freckles as a little kid and still am. And there was this particularly mean person. I'm not going to give you my sister's name, but but what Karen would do is, she called me Spot, and it just hurt my feelings, like of just like little insecure Bobby Goff. And there was a person that took a genuine interest in me. They got a Sharpie and they started connecting the dots. I was the first kid in 2nd grade with ink on both arms. They made giraffes and rhinos. I loved my freckles. They were endless possibilities. And so I would say, to answer your question, find some safe people that'll help you connect the dots between your faith, between the opportunities, and then have your head on a swivel. If you have a beautiful ambition, and then it crosses with an opportunity, be there.
Yeah, so good, so good.
Yeah, another question for you, Bob. Was there a moment in your own life where distraction actually kept you from a moment where God wanted you to pay attention to what was happening?
Oh, I'll tell you 2 things that spring to mind. I wake up in the morning and we've got this little tiny boat. And I went out in the bay to watch the sunrise. I just want to I got this much life left. I want to soak in the sunrise. So I saw this great sunrise, and this kind of a unique boat. It didn't fancy, but it's kind of unique. And I got back in. I was in the house, and I'm sitting with a little fire, and I'm sitting there. I look way across the bay, and there's another boat that looked just like mine that pulled into the bay. And so I got the binoculars out and I'm looking, I'm like, crazy, who would have thunk that? And I looked a little closer, it's my boat. I got out of, this is the guy who just wrote a book called Undistracted. I got out of the boat, I never tied it up at the dock. I just went inside. I'm like, I should not operate heavy equipment. Another time when I was in college, I was thinking back about times where I got distracted. There was a guy that was a luthier. He made guitars, and he had shavings everywhere. He looked like he was with the Doobie Brothers. He had like shavings in his beard and on his clothes. And I asked him, will you teach me how to make a guitar? And he said he would. And so for the next 6 months, we bent the wood, we put everything on there, carved the neck. The last thing we had to do is put the fretboard on it. And then he got sick, and then I got whatever he had, and the school ended. And I was in my attic trying to kick my kids and all their junk out of our house. Yeah. Is that happening with you guys?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it is.
I'm like, take it with you. And so I found this guitar case. I'm like, whose guitar is this? I open it up. It's my unfinished guitar. All I needed to do was put the fretboard on it. 44 years. Wow. It had sat almost ready to play a song. And so what I did, I still didn't know how to put the fretboard on. I found a guy to put the fretboard on. A day later, we string it up and play some music. And here's the thing. We have this thing. I'm back to deferral. What happens is we have this beautiful ambition. We're going to do missions work. We're going to engage the world. We're going to take our faith out for a spin and see what happens. But then we just don't quite get there. And I just want to find somebody who will help you get the fretboard and make some music.
So beautiful.
One of our guests that's here, actually, I thought this was interesting. A lot of people give into distraction, Bob, because they lose track of what God has done in their lives. Is there a, quote, Bob Goff origin story, an inciting moment maybe that really created your faith as it currently stands? Maybe an inspiration for us all to remember our own God story.
Yeah, the thing that sprung to mind is a realization. It would be evident to anybody else, but I thought I was supposed to be my dad. And he's a terrific guy. He lives right next door to me. But I realized in college, I'm not him. And he's not me, nor did he ask me to be him. Something really beautiful that happens when we just kind of get comfortable in our own skin and realize that God's up to something unique in me that he might not be doing in someone else's life. One thing that'll punk you every time with distraction is comparison. Like if I try to compare myself with these amazing people that you've had speaking, I'd go like, well, what have I got? I would be like, you know, following Kenny G playing the kazoo. But I love this idea that God never compares what he creates. And so I just delighted watching and listening and knowing each people, even those of you that are tuning in, what God is doing in your life. I'm not comparing. I just want to see what it is and get delighted. And then a realization that God's given us what we need, right? 2 Peter 1:3, and it says that God has already given us everything that we need to lead beautiful lives. And so what I want us to do is to just kind of take inventory. Say, what's God given me? Has he given me an opportunity, a talent? But just because you have a capability, I'm a pretty good lawyer, but just because I'm capable of being a lawyer doesn't mean I'm called to be a lawyer. And so if you need to have your burn the ships moment, there has never been a job I've taken that on the first day of the job, I didn't write my resignation letter. It wasn't fancy, just 2 words. I quit. And I put it in an envelope. I address it to my brand new boss, put a stamp on it, and give it to Sweet Maria. And I tell her, if this job ever gets in between me and you or me and Jesus, you mail that thing in, you don't even need to tell me, I'll find out. And then so some of you may be that you're not getting to this big, beautiful calling that God's given you because you're waiting for permission. And I just want to say you have permission. You have permission to be new creation. You have permission to be bold. You have permission to love people without an agenda. Just don't have anything on the other side of the equal sign. Have an agenda for yourself. Don't have it for anybody else. And there's something beautiful. Let your faith guide your steps. And the funny thing is that you're going to find out more about yourself. I found out more about myself listening to the stories tonight, the things that you guys have been talking about. And so make this typical, make this commonplace that you're surrounding yourself with people that have lifted their eyes to just say, is there a more beautiful story to be told? I love that. Let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story. Like, so write it down. Like, don't let, I have a bias towards writing things down. I bet I send myself 150 emails every day. Like literally, I get home, I'm like, him again, block. But what if you, when something pings you, write that thing down. You don't want to go to a gathering like this and say, how was it? And say, swell. You say like, tell me why. So maybe taking that moment, write it down.
Beautiful.
Bob, just we've been talking a little bit about your new book that's coming out, Undistracted. Just kind of an overview, just a synopsis of the book itself and your encouragement for those of us that are joining us tonight at the M3 conference on how to get that out of our lives.
Yeah, you just got to know it. You just got to spot that, create the sniffer for what it is and sniff out distraction to say, oh, this is little insecure Bobby Goff looking for validation right now. And as soon as you sniff that out, then you can say, now we know what's going on. You saw the story. The story is you will be rejected. What do you crave? Acceptance. What are you doing? All kinds of crazy stuff that God hasn't called you to do. And if we do that, then we can start rewriting the story. And so this is it. What's making you do what you do? And then how can you have this idea to make your requests known to God? But this is a God who says, I know what you want before you ask for it. I think it starts with making it known to yourself. To say, this is what's going on. I am just so anxious right now. But don't just say, I want to be happy. Let's just drill down on that. Say, what's happy look like?
And don't you think, I'm sorry to interrupt, but don't you think sometimes distractions can, on the surface, look good?
Totally.
That will keep us from our God-given purpose, right?
Totally. And if golf is your thing, like, awesome. Hit that ball. But if you're doing that because you're trying to create some distance between you and the argument that you haven't been able to resolve or the relationship that's really difficult, then just bring that to Jesus and just say, give me the guts and the grit to find the words or better words to describe that thing. And I'm not going to chase a little white ball anymore, or I'm going to do plenty of that. And then I'm going to go home and have the conversation we need to have.
You know, Bob, I think you epitomized this, but I love one of the things you said. This isn't a business trip, it's an adventure.
Yeah.
That's the way that our life should be as new believers, shouldn't it?
Yeah, I don't need all the details. So you got to figure out what's your relationship with ambiguity. Like I would go, do you like things ambiguous?
Not at all.
Not at all. That's Sweet Maria. She's like, oh, heck no. They are seeing other people. But ambiguity is my friend. Like I go everywhere with ambiguity because it represents all these possibilities. What might happen next? And so that idea in John 17 where you take these two people and you say the two will become one, Maria thought we were going to become her. I'm like, oh, heck no. But she's not trying to be like me and I'm not trying to be like her. We're trying to be like Jesus.
Yeah, so good, so good.
That is good. Bob, thank you so much.
Oh, it's so good to be with you
It's
guys.
so-
Thanks for letting me tag along.
Oh, always a pleasure to have you here. An impactful and really a great way to wind up this year's M3 conference. Dr. Paul, before we close things down, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, I'll just say a few things that we've learned tonight. Maybe ask Bob to pray for us at the end, if you wouldn't mind. But, you know, I like what Tim reminded us. God loves us too much to let our calling be our undoing. There's a lot to ponder on in that. I love what Nicholas talked about, you know, using going after a comprehensive approach to providing change for an entire community. Not just rescuing people, but how can we change a community? And then I love the way Kieran and Joanna talked to us about taking bold risks to follow the shepherd. So good. Bob, several things I wrote down. My fears are most susceptible to truth and obedience. You can think about that for a long time. If you want to meet Jesus, he's in the room. If you're in the room with hungry people, thirsty people, naked people, people that are sick, and people that are refugees, people that need a room. And I love what you said. Be crystal clear on why you are doing what you're doing, because so often we get in a default mode setting and we just are doing things and we don't even know why we're doing it, and we miss the very thing God's called us to do. And then the last thing is God wants us to do courageous things. I think he wants every one of us as believers, as his followers, to do courageous things. So I think it's been a great M3. We appreciate you watching tonight. We look forward to next year being in person, and we so appreciate all of our speakers. So appreciate Bob Goff for just pouring your heart out to us tonight. And you know, I usually close this in prayer, but would you close this in prayer tonight?
I would be so honored to. So Jesus, you've been eavesdropping on this evening. You've been eavesdropping on our entire lives. Give us the guts and the grit, not to just hear and agree with this stuff, but to make a bold move, to just do a courageous move, only one that we could rely on you to make. And so let us not be hard on ourselves, but to embrace you, to just say that you are in the room and you desire us. And if that leads us overseas to hurting, lonely, isolated people, then make a way. And we pray this in your strong Son's name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Well, as we close tonight, that doesn't mean the M3 community shuts down. In fact, our prayer room is actually going to be opening in just a couple of minutes. Many of the conference resources continue to be available all year round, of course, at m3missions.com. This year's M3 conference will be available in its entirety on demand, M3's YouTube page. And don't forget to pre-register today for the 2023 M3 conference, as Dr. Paul just said, in person again next year. If you register now before the 27th of February, you'll actually get 50% off on your registration. We can't wait to see you again in person. We'd like to again thanks to our sponsors, our church partners and exhibitors, and everyone else who make this event possible. Don't forget Bob Goff's brand new book, Undistracted, comes out on
March 1st.